Marcus, welcome to the pod, my man.
Nick, thanks for having me. How are you?
I am doing great. I typically have a Monday joke lined up if I'm recording on Mondays. Today, I don't have one,
Ah,
um, but Mondays are usually an interesting part of the week. Probably my least
what,
favorite day of
what
the
was
week by
last
far.
Monday's joke?
Last Monday's joke was I had Seth Wickersham on the pod, who is an author. Actually, it wasn't really a joke, but I said, "Hey, Mondays are usually pretty terrible, but I'm interviewing you today, so it's actually pretty good."
Oh,
It's not really a joke, but maybe like a nice little compliment to kick off the pod.
gotcha. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
Um, but Marcus, dude, excited for you to be here. Excited to feature you and your journey and talk through kind of what seems like a wild roller coaster ride
Yeah.
to the NFL. And I'm sure once you got to the league, it was probably equally as wild. And now you're doing your thing in the entrepreneur space, and you have a couple companies, and you're really pushing a great message. So excited to feature all of that today for the audience and on this pod. But before we get into any of the details, if someone's
Mhm.
just clicked on this and they have no idea who you are, never heard of you, why do you think they should stick around and listen to what you have to say?
That's a great question, man. I think because I think the premise of what my purpose is, especially like when I was in my 20s, just turning in my 30s, was defying limitations. Like I didn't want to just be known as, a guy from LA or a guy that played football. I wanted to do a multitude of things. Like if you look at like different entrepreneurs or investors or things of that nature, they dabble in so many different things. But I wanted football to be the main premise to kind of pillar off to certain things. So I think to answer your question is a young individual who understands that we only get this precious thing called life once, and he wants to squeeze out every bit of life that he can before God calls me to glory.
How do you, and I've talked about it on this pod before too, just this idea of death. And, sometimes I'll share it with my friends like, oh, you're being too morbid or, why are you thinking about death? But I think for me, it's useful because it helps me reframe
Yeah,
my own life and gives it a sense of purpose and a sense of meaning. At the end of the day, also a sense of urgency, right? Like, even now I'm in my late 20s, but I kind of think back to how quickly these just even the past 5 years have flown by. And
right.
I'm like, damn, it feels like I was in my early 20s yesterday, and now it's gone. So, like, how do you think about and help and I guess use it to your advantage, this idea of death and the limited amount of time that we have?
I spoke with Gary Vaynerchuk one time, and he said you have to look at things of if you're 85 or 90 on your deathbed, or you're going to ask the questions of, man, when I was 55, I wish I would have done that. Or, man, when I was 25, I knew I should have at least tried that. Or when I was 35 or 42 or however old you are, man, I wish I would have done that. Rather than saying, man, maybe I shouldn't have done that. Like looking at the pros and cons of both. And to me, like I've never been fearful of death. I've always been fearful of regrets, right? And that just comes with a lot of FOMO as well that I've been working through. But I've always been a guy that, in terms, likes to like jump off the porch and very risk savvy, and just understanding that if you throw things at the wall, something's going to stick, right? So that's just kind of how I look at things. Of well, when it is time for me to go, at least I can say, or others can say, like, well, man, that guy, what didn't he do, right? And that's kind of what like pillared me off to where I am now. It went from a stage of, so a little bit of my background. I was born and raised in LA, and I went to undergrad in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Didn't get drafted or anything, so I moved to London, where I got my MBA in global business finance. And then from there, I played for the Jacksonville Jaguars and the LA Chargers. So understanding, so mine was a little bit different. I was a 24-year-old rookie. So I understood myself mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, holistically a little bit more, as well as understanding that America is such a very small market. You have the Russian market, the African market, the EU market. Like there's so many different aspects and viewpoints of how life is viewed, and you don't get to understand that until you're able to travel and put yourself in those different shoes. Like what you having the time to, this is really important too, taking the time to really learn to unlearn. I think a lot of that started from after 25 for me. Like 20 to 25, you're trying to figure out, okay, what is life? What am I trying to do? And then 25 to 30, you're like, I'm starting to unlearn a lot of things. And then from now, what am I, 32? So now 30 to 32, a lot of it is now going backwards of learning to unlearn a lot of things, right? And so I'm saying all that to say I wanted to play football because of the talent, but I wanted to do it because all the different endeavors that it can align me with. Like being a professional athlete can put you in certain rooms others people can't. But I knew once I got into those rooms, I can just take over, right? So I use football as a pillar to get in those different aspects.
I have a bunch of follow up questions, but just hearing you talk about being in certain rooms and taking advantage of certain opportunities reminds me of Theodore Roosevelt's Man in the Arena kind of thing that he wrote, basically saying, "Hey, you should strive to be the man in the arena, the guy who is or girl who's taking the action, who's actually doing the thing, and not just someone who's on the sideline, maybe talking about doing the thing." And I was listening to this entrepreneur speak. I was watching one of those YouTube videos, and he was saying, people always come up to him and ask him, "Hey, how do I find opportunities? Like, what's the next big thing? What's on the horizon?" And he said, "Well, I think to be able to identify opportunities, you need to be doing something.
Right.
And by doing something, you're going to start to learn whether it's a specific industry or maybe it's a specific technique or something that will maybe lead you to an opportunity that's out there that others who are on the sideline may not be able to see." So like, taking podcasting as something that I'm currently in, like being in this industry, being in podcasting, making content, putting out on YouTube, I'm a lot closer to it than somebody who's maybe sitting on the sideline saying, "Well, one day I'd love to be a content creator." So
Right.
in my eyes, not saying it's impossible for that person on the sideline to identify opportunities, but I would like to believe that it's probably easier for me just because I'm in it and I'm keeping up with the trends and I'm actually doing it. So hearing you talk about, being in the NFL, being in those certain rooms, the advantages and the opportunities that it gave you, that's, I think, part of the equation. But then the next part is like, how do you actually take advantage of those opportunities, and how do you act on that? So I'm curious if you want to expand just how you were able to take action once you saw that there was a certain opportunity.
Right. So for me, growing up, I was always an individual where if everybody was going left, I wanted to go right. If everybody was saying blue, I wanted to say red. So I really like 90% of why the only reason why I wanted to play in the NFL is because people told me I wouldn't be able to or I wasn't good enough. Like I really just wanted to play just to prove others wrong. Like, it had nothing to do with me really liking football. It was that was like 90% of my motivation, right? And I think it was a blessing in disguise. But at first, it was very negative, of proving others wrong. But then when I channeled that energy to proving myself right, that's when everything evolved and changed in a positive light. Because I was going at it as a I told you so to now, Marcus, I told you so, or I knew I can do it, right? And then another thing too is understanding business, sales, marketing all in its own. It's like what we do with our athletes, and I'll express a little bit what I do now, but you have to do your homework, your due diligence. I remember, man, going to the Cannes film festivals and traveling the world, like knowing who people were, what their job titles were, what they looked like, so that it's just a lot. Like you have to like really like figure things out and be quick on your toes, but like going to things with a purpose, right? So that's just kind of like where I got a lot of that stuff from. And as they say you only get one. You might only get one opportunity, but you have to seize it. So like if you're going to your question, when you're going into those rooms, how can I articulate and also be kind of relatable in different sense, not just talking about sports, but maybe wines or current endeavors or interior decoration or whatever it might be, so I can stand out, right? And not just being like an athlete or an entrepreneur or somebody from Los Angeles, but figuring out different ways, just being an athlete. Everybody's fast, everybody can catch, everybody wants to be a receiver or DB. But how do I stand out a tad bit more? And that's just kind of how I use those transitional skills, translatable skills into the business world.
I'm curious to go back on something you said a bit earlier about learning to unlearn and some of the things that you've had to unlearn throughout your life. What are some examples of that? Because I think a lot of people will hear that and they'll say, "That sounds great," because I'm sure we all have things that bad habits that we'd love to unlearn. So if you could just give a couple examples of what you've had to unlearn and how you're able to do it.
Yeah, I think, well, the biggest eye opener was travel. Like traveling, if someone says the sky is purple and I've never been outside, you're going to believe it, the sky is purple. And then when I take when I take the courage to go outside and see the sky is blue, I say, wait a minute. So what else have people been saying that is really not, to what I think? So that's what I mean as far as that, as far as like figuring out, what is my perception on happiness, success, life, things of that nature. And then I just think that comes with time. But travel has definitely been one of the biggest avenues, and being blessed to kind of like be still and understand kind of what I would like life to look like. And also to answer your question too, really trying, I think the better we're able to try to, you can't master it, but to your best ability, the conception of patience, that's been the biggest help too. It's like there's been times where I've tried to kick through doors and God's like, this door is not open for a reason. And then as I say, I kind of nudge at it and I'm like, okay, this door is not open for a reason. Let me relax and try the next door. And this door is easily wide open, right? And so like learning the balance to, and when I'm saying learning to unlearn, is sometimes in life, we're told this and told that, but a lot of times if we ask certain questions and we seek the knowledge for that, then it's like, oh, okay, I totally understand. And then you start to separate how you view things versus what is the norm of society. And to conclude all this, to my standpoint, being in different countries and cities, that has kind of woken me up to like see outside of the box, if that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, no, totally. I really love one thing that you said about being patient and learning which doors are open for you in this exact moment. And yeah, maybe a dumb example, maybe not, but I have some friends that are currently single, myself included. But like people always ask me like, oh, you're single, like, don't you want a girlfriend or something? Yeah, I mean, I'd love. Like, who would say that they wouldn't want to have a significant other, right? Like
Right.
everyone wants to have someone. But like the way that I view it is like, all right, in this current season of my life, for whatever reason, like I am single, like it ain't happening right now. And I basically have two options. I can either sit here and pout and be like, why is the world conspiring against me? Why can I not find this other person? Or I can accept it and be like, all right, in this season of my life, I'm going to be single and I'm going to go through this journey and do whatever I need to do. And maybe my focus needs to be on something else.
Right.
And so that's why I resonate with what you said. Like, hey, God, shuts certain doors in certain moments of your life, and you can either try and push up against that and create all this misery for yourself, or you can try to just accept things for, where they are right now, and just continue to try and live in the present as much as you can.
Optimism and like scaling, that's the biggest thing. It's like, okay, you have a girlfriend, but then what? Like it comes with, not saying that it's bad or anything, but you have to have, a man and a woman has to have their purpose first. Like a woman could be the prettiest girl in the world, she can cook, do all, be the best mother. But if you don't have your apples in a row or whatever the saying is, it's not going to work out, right? So you're probably, as everybody else, is probably single for a reason. Like you might think it's time for a girlfriend, but what that comes with being a father comes with being married really comes with buying a house really comes with being a husband and a wife really comes with. It might look good and sound good because of the societal norms of how old you are and what everybody else is doing, but you never know what's going behind closed doors, right? And so the more you're able to tailor yourself to be the best person you can be and go through certain things that will help you along the lines when you do guys get in those different arguments or situations, the trials and tribulations you went through individually and learned who you were and comfortable in your own self and loved yourself will help better prepare you than if you're trying to cram it in now. And when you get to that stage, you're in a fluff and don't know how it works. So,
Uh, well said. I'm curious. Talking about societal norms, and you're 100% right. Like for someone like me who's in their late 20s, like society kind of tells you like, hey, you should, if you don't have a serious partner, you should probably have a serious partner and you should be looking towards marriage and having a kid, and like now is kind of the time to do it. And so I think a lot of people feel that and they're like, well, I'm doing something wrong because everyone else is getting married and having kids and I'm not. I'm curious though, as an athlete, like, were there any societal norms or pressures that you felt or that you saw that you pushed back against when you were in the NFL?
That's a great question. I'm gonna say yes, but it really didn't click till after. It really that's when life really I really start to peel it back. Like, okay, what makes me happy? What do I want to do? How do I want to be viewed? Because being a professional athlete, man, it goes from all these, like somebody has like a hot song, then they're like on top of the world, and then now it's like, well, you're a one hit wonder. Now you're like fucked. So now it's kind of like the same thing. It's like all those no's that you used to get become yeses immediately, and then once you're done playing, depending on how you foster the different relationships and harness being an athlete, they can turn into no's really quickly. And then you start to really get vulnerable and like, man, were these people just here in my life for a season because of kind of what it came with rather than just me? And so going through that, it was like, man, what, like, really sitting down with self and like really understanding, okay, what just makes me happy? Do I want this or this job title or looking cool for validation of others or for self? And that takes a while. That takes therapy. That takes being still with self. That takes, like prayer and all that stuff. But once you're able to like, I don't want to do that because I don't want to do that, right? And then, or that's not suitable for me, and I'm okay with saying no. Like me, I thank God for this because like I always like my favorite word has always been no, so I never have problems with that. Other people really have problems with rejection and saying no. Like I love rejection. I love being told no. So that's kind of been a superpower in a sense. But for people who have those issues, you gotta feel and sit down and understand what peace of mind really feels like, right? And making the decisions for yourself rather than what society wants. And a lot of times, too, to your point, like a lot of people, man, as you get older, and it's probably you've seen when you were a kid, a lot of people hit those societal norms and like, I'm almost 30, I need to be in a relationship, and then getting in situations where it doesn't make sense long term holistically, but it just looks good on paper. So I'm with this guy or this girl because everybody else is with me, but like we're not compatible. I'm just wasting time, and then in the end, it doesn't work out. It's you got to really like think long term.
Well, I think social media has really done a number and cranked up the societal pressure and these norms. Because now, like, you don't only hear about your neighbor, or maybe you run into one of your old friends at the grocery store and they tell you, "Hey, I'm married." Now you just see it everywhere,
Right.
and even people that you forgot about in high school are now popping up on your feed, and you're being constantly reminded and bombarded with these messages of like, what are you doing? You're falling behind. Everyone just doing this one thing. So I think social media has definitely hurt a lot of people in that manner, just with trying to keep up with societal norms, honestly.
To that point, like that comes with experience and really being still with self. Like every year I have a word, and this year's word is diet for me. So like being in control of your diet. I don't mean the consumption of food that you eat, the news that you read, the gossip that you hear, the things you're able to see, the things you're able to touch, feel, and put yourself in that environment. You have to really control that aspect. And like you said, you stuff you're seeing on social media, that's a choice, right? You have the choice to go on there. You have the choice to make that your reality. You can kind of, you know, dilute that a little bit and just mean like, okay, this is social media. This is not real stuff. This is what reality is. I'm going to take a break off that and really like get with what's going on in reality. So all that stuff is a choice. So I think having a diet of what you consume mentally, visually, auto wise, it's really good for the brain.
Yeah, no, couldn't agree more. And that's one thing I've been trying to work on is trying to limit, not just limit, but to your point, like change my information diet.
Yeah.
Instead of just watching things that I know are going to piss me off, especially if one of my sports teams loses. Like, listen, man, I know if I go to the comments of this video, people are going to be hating on the Niners or they're going to be making fun of the 49ers. Like, I'm not going to, I'm not going to do it because I know I'm just going to walk away being pissed off. Marcus, I do want to get to your journey a little bit because, like I kind of teased at the beginning of this episode, you had quite the journey to the NFL. So I'm curious, for those unfamiliar with your story, if you could just kind of break down how you went from Inglewood all the way to playing for the Jaguars and the Chargers.
Yeah, so a little bit about me, like going back, it's like I played 8-man football, so it wasn't really a football school, it was more of a basketball and an educational type of small school. And then I went to undergrad in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. It was more of a liberal arts, like, hey, just come play football, we'll teach you how to, we'll give you the degree and become a good man or whatever. Um, but it was like only two of us where, you go to Alabama, you want to go to the NFL. You go to Clemson, like that, they engrade that from middle school. But for me, it was more of a just to get a degree, get a good job, buy a house, get married, like the whole, like the societal things. And then so as I was looking at things, I was like, well, I don't want that, just that part. I want to play in the NFL. That's why I'm playing football, right? And so all the no's I used to get and like just discouragement. That's what really like turned me on. And then so having hearing words of encouragement from NFL players and scouts and coaches, okay, go somewhere, get some film, and we can revisit this the next year. That was my motivation: is the words of affirmation from individuals where I wanted to be, not where I didn't want to be. That was the biggest thing. So when I wasn't really getting play time, I was treating practice like it was crazy. I'm very visionary. Like I was treating it like in college you'll run a 3-step slant, but in the pros you'll run a sphinx, which is a 5-step slant. So I'm working on a 5-step slant, right? Like I was always like, I know where I want to be. I'm not limited to what is norm, right? And then so I moved to London, got my MBA in global business finance, was probably the hardest thing I've ever done in life, but it opened my horizons to something totally different on the business side as well as the sports side, and then building the relationships from that. And then, being blessed with the opportunity with Jacksonville, and everything's like with the Joneses. Like once an NFL team hears, okay, you got the opportunity here. Okay, well, who's the guy then? It's kind of once I got the first opportunity with Jacksonville, then the Chargers like, okay, well, you got his first NFL shot. Let's take a look at him too. So it's like a domino effect how all that works. Just like girl doesn't really like you until all the other girls like you. Kind of like the same type of thing.
Right.
So, and then being born and raised in LA, had to work out. But I was in 2017 after the Jaguars, but I didn't get signed until literally a whole year later. Like I was working, I was training, I was doing like like trying to stay in shape, playing like in the spring league. And I got a call in February that 2018, and they were like, "Hey, are you still working out? How's he doing? Things of that nature." So that really motivated me a little bit more because you never know the timetable. And I never forget, man, July 2018, I was gonna go work for a corporate company because of my background in global business finance. And man, I was like it was like my fourth interview. I was sitting down with like a friend doing like this marketing thing. And my agent called me. He's like, "Hey, the Chargers are looking at you. Stay ready." But they said that last year, right? So it's like, okay, well, whatever. But I've always treated every day, every phone call like I was gonna get it. I never slacked off, never, because I had a friend that did that, and he stopped working out for 2 months, and he got a random call, and he wasn't ready. So that was always motivation for me. Then literally, man, 10 minutes later, after my agent called, the GM called, Tom Telesco at the time. He's like, "Hey, man, we want you to come in tonight, blah, 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 blah." But if I wasn't ready, I would have blew it, right? So that's what led me then, playing. And then it was interesting because the year before, I was like on the fan side, like trying to like figure out, again, going to the homework, seeing who was in the room, who were the scouts, who were the coaches, who were the GM, what they looked like, what was their job title. So when I did see them, I could provide value, right, and finagle my way through there. But that was always interesting of seeing how hard work really can take you to that other side, right? And Will Smith said, on the other side of fear is success, and just looking this way at where I wanted to be, and then looking this way to where I was. That was an epiphany all in its own. And then playing and doing that for a good year, and then also the biggest thing was being in LA, being born and raised there. So that was really cool.
I, maybe a bit of a fun question. Do you think players care about what city they play in? And let me preface this by saying, like, you had a specific thing, right, where you're from LA, you're playing for the LA Chargers. So I'm assuming you're pretty happy just being born and raised. But in general, like, unless a player is from a certain city and they're playing for their, I guess, hometown team, Do you think in general NFL players care about what city they're in?
Yeah, because like for free agents, you kind of I think if you go undrafted, like they'll have like three teams that could be like, okay, they want to bring you in, and you kind of weigh like, okay, how many receivers are there? How many DBs are there? How many quarterbacks do they have? What's the injury report? What's my probability of playing? Right. But I do think people do care. Like, you know, how you see people sitting out like, hey, I didn't want to play for the Utah Jazz, or I didn't want to play for like Eli Manning. He didn't want to play for the Chargers, right? So it has to make sense long term because some people don't like certain weather. Some people don't like the markets. Some people will thrive in a bigger market. So yeah, I think players absolutely care where they play.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like I think the NBA it's a little more pronounced just because like this. I think the small markets in the NBA are like truly small. You brought up Utah. I'm a big
Yeah,
Sacramento Kings fan. Like if you're in those markets, like it's tough. But the NFL seems because the NFL is so big, it seems like every market is a decently sized market. Like even Jacksonville, who probably has on paper maybe the smallest market. I
right,
think I mean you're in the NFL. Like if you're good, you will get exposure. The
right,
concern is like if you're in the NBA, you're playing for Sacramento or for Utah or one of these smaller teams. Unless you're someone like Giannis, right, top three, top
yeah.
five MVP, like you're just not going to get the exposure. So that's why I ask because it's always been interesting to me. Like, do players actually care if they play for the Rams or if they play for the Browns or the Jags, like whoever?
I think that's where NBA players have that misconception, and I think that's a lot of things what we do here. Or what so the company we run now is Pro Edge Branding, but it's easier for basketball players because you have the face recognition, and it's only 12 of you. If you play for the Seahawks and there's like what 56 of you, like it's hard to distinguish who is who unless you're like, Sam Darnold or the quarterback or the receiver or stuff like that. But for me, like I would pick being playing for the Sacramento Kings as an NBA player with face recognition any day, because you no matter what market it is, it's still a market. You could be in South Dakota, LA, wherever it is, you're able to harness that, right? It's just a strategic way of how you do so. And the better you are, obviously on the court, the same thing with OKC when Kevin Durant left and Russell left. They were pretty stagnant for a bit, and then they got all these draft picks, and then they traded, and then they got hot again. So it can get hot and get cold, but that's just what the thing about being at the sports is. So I think to that point, people really do care where they go.
How do you look back now on your time in the NFL?
Grateful, like utmost grateful. Like I think everything of where I am now tributes to that. I couldn't even imagine honestly how life would look without it. Like man, there's no way. There's no way I can tell you what I'd be doing without if I didn't play in the NFL. To be like totally honest with you, I give everything like the opportunity to thank God for that. And but how I was able to maximize it, but I wasn't going to be able to maximize it if I didn't play, right? So, man, I couldn't tell you how my life would be in any sort of frame if I did not play in the NFL. Just to be honest.
Why do you say that? Is there like a specific skill or something that you learned that has transferred well to what you're doing now, or why do you look back on that time with such gratitude?
Because it gave me such a platform that it was long term. That like such a what 0. Whatever percent it is. And now, when you say that, your ears pillar, right? So now it's the NFL and the NBA, and now you're able to, okay, now I'm gonna listen to this guy, and now I can provide value. If, man, like if I didn't get that call, I'd really be like working some job I'd hate. I wouldn't be able to be in the rooms that I was able to get into. I wouldn't be having the purposeful life that I've been able to. Football, that little pigskin has taken me and opened so many doors globally that I had no idea about, right? And like I said, like if I never made it, I have absolutely no idea where I'd be.
Yeah, that's a good point. It almost like establishes your credibility in a
One
way,
trillion percent.
right? Like to your point, Marcus Peterson, NFL player, like I hear that, I'm like, okay. And I guess before I finish that, the reason, so on this podcast, right, I try to interview athletes and entrepreneurs, because it's kind of what I'm interested in. Like I love sports, I love business, and merging those together, you kind of get this podcast. But B, because I think there's so many similarities between the two. And I think nowadays you're seeing that more and more with social media and with everything going on and all these platforms. You're seeing athletes transfer to entrepreneurship a lot more. And I've interviewed a bunch on this podcast, and they always talk about the skills that they learned as an athlete, whether it be in the NBA, NFL, NHL, whatever league, whatever sport, and how it was able to transfer to the world of business. And so, what I was trying to say earlier is like, if I meet you and you're like, hey, I made it to the NFL, I played in the NFL, immediately I'm like, okay, like there's some level of credibility there. Like
Right.
that means Marcus is probably hardworking. He probably takes things seriously. He's probably accountable. He's probably all these different things, because to make it to the NFL is a very difficult venture versus like if I were to meet you and you would say like, hey, I'm Marcus, I don't know, do whatever, I'd be like, okay, well, maybe that's not as powerful
Right.
as, a thing to bring up. So that's why I love interviewing athletes and talking about them, that transition to entrepreneurship, because I feel like there's a lot of similarities between the two.
Right. And I think to that point too, it's like that's cool, right? Playing professional, but now what? That's been the biggest thing. Like for me, it always wasn't like National Football League. It was always not for long because I played 8 man, didn't get drafted, a whole bunch of stuff. So I knew, and a lot of it too is like I said, proving others wrong. But I knew now the business aspect of how I can take things. I know if I get this platform, I can like take over, right? So that's another reason why, okay, like getting into those rooms and like saying, NFL player, I can kind of meet these C-suite executives, key decision makers, now providing value to other different endeavors that I do, and I'm able to articulate that. Probably without the NFL thing, I wouldn't be able to articulate it, right? So taking it, having an armadillo of skin and taking it as it is. It's like, she's only talking to me because I'm handsome, or he's only talking to me because I'm pretty. Yes, but now what do I do with those talents and those gifts? Or they're only talking to me because, whatever, but like just using it to your advantage, not using it as a handicap or disadvantage.
I had Marcel Reese on the pod, former Raiders fullback, and he kind of talked about the same thing. He was an executive with the Raiders for some time, and his background in football and then the NFL kind of provided him not only credibility with others to say that I belong here, but credibility with himself. He's like, listen, I made it to the NFL. I performed at a high level in the NFL. I mean, Marcel is arguably one of the best fullbacks the league has ever seen, especially when you consider that he was one of the first like true Swiss Army knives with his
Right,
ability to receive and run and block and do all the things that he did with the Raiders. But he was like, it's almost like I proved to myself, like, yeah, like you do belong here. Like you belong in these rooms with these people, because yes, they are hardworking, but guess what? So am I. And yes, they are smart, but guess what? So am I. So it's like, there's an element of like proving it to others, but also just being able to prove it to yourself and say, yeah, I can do this. And I
right,
think it ties back to what we talked about earlier. Like you have to be the man in the arena. You have to be the one taking the action. Until
right,
you actually get out there and play football or try to record a podcast, I'm in no way comparing the two because they're two very different things. But
right,
all of that to say, until you are doing the thing, you cannot prove to yourself that you can actually do the thing,
right,
because there's no other way to prove it to yourself and to others besides actually doing it. And so
right.
like people ask me, like I'll have friends like, hey man, I want to do this, I want to do that, what do you think about this, what do you think? I'm like, dude, I don't know, do it.
Yeah,
And then see, do it for a month, 2 months, 6 months, a year. And what's funny is like I heard Mr. Beast talk about this on a podcast. He was like, yeah, I always have people come up to me and ask for advice for YouTube, like how to grow a YouTube channel. And he was like, I just stopped giving advice, and I would tell them, make 100 YouTube videos. Make 100 YouTube videos, and after 100, if you come back to me and you still have the same question, I will answer it for you. But I might first ask you, like, why do you still have the same question? You should have figured it out by now.
right,
But more times than not, like after 100 YouTube videos, you're going to answer your own question, and
right,
you will find out. And so I don't know. That's why I'm glad we got to the topic of taking action and actually doing the thing because I think it's so important and people miss the mark with that completely.
Absolutely, I agree.
Marcus, I did want to ask. So you had a post on your Instagram that you worked out with Colin Kaepernick once,
Yeah, yeah.
um, or maybe multiple times. I don't know the backstory, but I'm a huge 49ers fan, and obviously Colin Kaepernick was a big part of my life. Just what was your experience like with Cap? Like, how would you describe him to others?
Yeah, damn, I forgot about that. I'm so glad you reminded me. It was how firm he stood as number one, a man, number two, whatever position he was, and like not being altered of, I was good in the NFL, things might have happened, but my plan A, which resonated with me, is still playing in the NFL. Like, I don't care what critics are saying, media is saying. This is my stance. This is what I'm put on earth to do. Maybe football is very minute now, right? Now I have a whole other goal and purpose. And that was already ordained for him before he was even born. But to answer your question, how firm he stood, like you can tell. I've been around a lot of greats, but like him, well, definitely Tom Brady. That guy's crazy. But for Colin, he was very firm and believing in taking a stance, and that kind of like spreads on the football field. Like, I got to run 6 yards. I'm not going to run five. I'm going to run six. I'm going to run seven, right? And so that's where great leaders and great quarterbacks help the defense. They help the offense because everybody wants to be as great and not let people down. Like when you see people in the Lakers, like people are like, man, I wanted to play for the Lakers, but I, I didn't want to let Kobe down. And that's just the greatness that comes out. So I think that's kind of the same thing with Colin.
That's a really good point. It's almost like a sign of respect, right? That
Yeah,
you get for them.
yeah,
That's really interesting. I guess I never thought about that. It makes total sense now when you spell it out. But yeah, if you're playing with a quarterback that you truly respect, it's like you know what, he's going the extra mile, so am I. And
I have
to
notes.
what you're to what you're saying, like if I'm not going to run 5 yards, I'm going to run a 6 yard slant, even if it means I might get blown up over the middle of the field. Like I'm going to do it because I respect my quarterback.
Right, right. So I think that was the biggest thing. It's like his presence demanded that. And there's some people like when you look at CEOs or of companies, and everybody wants to go work for that company because they admire what the individual represents, right? So that's the same thing when it comes to football in my aspect.
Love it. Marcus, last question here to round us out. I ask all my guests this. If you could have a 30-minute conversation with any athlete or entrepreneur from history, who would it be and why? Dead or alive?
Well, I'm gonna do both. Kobe for sure, because that's my favorite athlete. Like Kobe, man, growing up in LA, Kobe was like, man, Kobe was up there. Especially being a kid during that time. I don't think you can get anything better. Maybe being a kid during when Michael Jordan was like Michael Jordan. Maybe that kind of the same. So definitely him. And on the entrepreneurial side, like, oh my God, yeah. So this is very controversial, but me understanding business and finance and everything, I would love to sit down with Chris Jenner and really pick her brain because whether it's controversial or not, they've mastered as an empire the art of visibility, attention, and diversity. Like, I don't care what anybody says about the Kardashians. How Kris Jenner was able to do that, I don't know what she did when she was married to the attorney, but how she was able to transition that whole thing into that's always been appealing to me. As I would love to sit down with Kris Jenner and just piggyback and just ask and figure out how they did that, right? So to answer your question, would be Chris and Kobe.
I think the Chris Jenner, I mean, the Kobe answer is great. And it's funny. I think I told, I grew up a Sacramento Kings fan. So I used to
Yeah,
hate Kobe growing up
yeah,
because he would always destroy us. And then obviously as I grew up and matured, I was like, oh yeah, I know this guy's pretty special. And not just even like his game, just like his maturity and his, opinions and the way that he viewed life, especially like as he retired, like after he retired.
Winning an Oscar.
Um, yeah, just and the advice, and I go back and I listen to some podcast episodes that he did, and I'm like, it's wisdom for days. But the Chris Jenner one is interesting, and I totally agree. Just how they've been able to stay relevant for, was it been like at 15 years?
25,
Like yeah,
25, yeah, yeah.
25 years. Like that's wild, man. Like especially in today's day and age where people come and go so quickly in terms of like popularity and Instagram model may be famous today and then tomorrow she's
That was
gone or
before like the Instagram stuff. So
right. Yeah.
how to transition from like if you look at like Netflix and Blockbuster, Blockbuster dropped the ball, but like how to become even more valuable in a whole new day and age and sustain and be scalable in two different dimensions. Like I don't think she gets the credit for sure, but she seems very humble. She didn't talk about it, but how to really take over and scale as the market goes. Listen, they're up there like with Microsoft and Google, and like how they McDonald's, how they continue to just thrive. And yeah, Chris, man, like I would definitely love to sit down with her for sure.
That's an awesome answer. Marcus, I know you have to run, but real quick before we sign off, where can people find you and more of your work?
Absolutely. So thanks again for having me, man. I really appreciate it. Just a great intuitive conversation. But LinkedIn for sure, Marcus Peterson. Instagram, Marcus T. Peterson. My middle name is Timothy, but Marcus T. Peterson, as well as www.proedgebranding.com. A lot of what we're doing on the entrepreneur side is, as we spoke about this time of being an athlete and understanding both the business and athletic side, is that's what the purpose is now. Is Pro Edge Branding. We specifically and specialize in helping athletes not only just discover, but leverage and monetize their brand value while their temperature is hot, and really coincide of while you're playing the game, those lucrative relationships you're able to build, the different endeavors you have off the field or off the court, how you can sustain those things and create more of the financial aptitude of what you're doing. And that's how we help athletes on the professional side as well as the college side as well. So you can find us at proedgebranding.com.
Love it, man. All those links will be in the description. Marcus, have to have you on for a part two.
Yeah,
I love your story. I love, I feel like you and I, shares a lot of the same ideas, and definitely I can tell that you're a well-traveled man, well cultured, and you've seen a ton. And I'm sure there's a ton of cool experiences and stories that you have as well. So, thanks again for coming on, man. This was a blast.
Nick, I really appreciate it. We'll definitely do a part two as well.
Absolutely. All right. Till next time, Marcus. Thanks again.
Thanks, Nick.